In this world, when a boy turns 18 while still a virgin, he simply dies on the spot, no warning, no cure, no explanation, and now, with his own birthday fast approaching, he has only a few months to win over the one girl he loves before the clock strikes midnight and turns his inexperience into a death sentence. Over a dense cityscape, narration fixes the date in 20XX, April 10th, the day when everything begins without warning. At a quiet convenience store, a nervous clerk forces a smile as a customer enters, and another coworker clumsily tries to start small talk about movies. In the back area, the older manager eagerly suggests they watch a horror movie together, while the girl shrinks back, apologizing and insisting she is too busy. Walking away with a stiff expression, she silently curses the pushy old man, wondering if this job is worth all the uncomfortable behavior as he pouts with fried food in hand. A loud clatter makes her spin around, eyes widening as something drops out of sight. She finds the manager collapsed on the floor, body limp and smeared with fallen food, his vacant eyes staring past her. His face twists grotesquely, drool and dark fluid spilling as she panics, shouting at him and realizing in horror that he might already be gone. Elsewhere, an online post gushes over a glamorous model at a promo event, calling her once in a millennium as cameras flash around her. In a messy room, stacked with bottles, a man types at his glowing monitor, thinking he can sell some gear and spend the money on a paid companionship service. Leaning back with a sly grin, he fantasizes about doing something he has never experienced before, savoring the thought. Mid-smirk, his face contorts. He claws at his own throat, eyes bulging as a strange pain seizes him. A thud shakes a suburban house, prompting a voice from inside to yell at someone named Takashi to stop making such a racket. At a packed Idol concert, frenzied fans chant in unison, sweat flying as they shout rhythmic calls toward the stage. Suddenly, men in the crowd begin to gag and topple over, faces twisting as screams replace the music and chaos erupts under the stage lights. A news helicopter slices through the night sky as frantic radio chatter describes an inexplicable wave of sudden adult male deaths sweeping the country. A stunned reporter in the chopper relays that all the victims' faces turned blue before dying, and no one knows why such a nightmare is unfolding. In the Prime Minister's emergency HQ, officials stare at grim charts showing that every recorded victim so far is a man over 18, with no shared jobs or travel histories. The Prime Minister, Adachi Hiromichi, scowls at the briefing, calling the unfolding disaster unprecedented. An aide rushes in, breathless, announcing that a revered national artisan, Tsuchiryu Sai, has just succumbed to the same bizarre phenomenon. Images of the old potter appear, recalling how he claimed his artistic purity depended on a life of strict abstinence, while Adachi laments his loss as a national tragedy. A single word, purity, reverberates in Adachi's mind, his eyes widening as if he has stumbled upon a terrifying clue. An advisor, sweating, questions whether this insane suspicion could actually be true. Another staffer bursts in to report that investigators have finally found one common trait linking all of the dead men. Later, at a press room, Adachi finishes a grave public announcement, his words echoing through the cavernous briefing hall. Behind closed doors, aides warn him that more than 22 million men are now at risk, and panic is spreading nationwide. A producer off-camera orders his crew to prepare the Prime Minister for a live interview. With a sharp gesture, Adachi demands that their discovery be blasted out through every television, radio, and online outlet immediately. The news helicopter circles the skyline as the crew hesitates, asking if they are really allowed to air such a shocking claim. The airborne reporter steadies himself, explaining that they have obtained data tying all of the mysterious deaths together. Bracing against the chopper's sway, he shouts that every man who collapsed was an adult who had lived in complete social isolation. The pilot and camera operator react in disbelief, repeating the word in confusion as the tension spikes. The pilot suddenly cries out an apology to his superior, terror surging across his face. The reporter grabs him, realizing in horror that the man at the controls has gone limp and lifeless. The chopper veers toward a skyscraper, reporters screaming as the building looms closer through the cockpit glass. A massive explosion tears through the tower, debris and fire raining down over the city streets. On a smartphone screen, footage of the burning municipal building plays as the news clarifies that the crash was not terrorism but another victim of the strange condition. At a desk, high schooler Kurumi Eri stares at his phone, his profile labeled as 17, his expression tightening. He mutters in disbelief, trying to deny what the broadcast is implying. His anxious friend rushes over, saying that the situation has gotten seriously bad. Morikubo Nobu, also 17, pushes up his glasses and grimly states that if someone fits that cursed condition, they are as good as dead. Irie brags about a supposed childhood fling with a neighbor, then casually promises Nobu a grand funeral, though another classmate points out he has no such experience. Internally, Eri admits he made that story up, hiding his insecurity behind a smug smile. His face splits between confident mask and sweating panic as he confesses to himself that he is still completely inexperienced. From behind, he sits rigidly at his desk, convinced that dying this way would be the most pathetic fate imaginable. Determination flares as he decides his heart has already chosen the one person he wants to share his first serious relationship with. He sneaks a glance over his shoulder, nerves jangling. His eyes fall on Amemiya Noah, a cheerful classmate in a blazer and skirt, chatting with friends at her locker. In his mind, he sees her radiant smile and decides that no one else in the world could possibly compare. He remembers back in middle school, standing by the board during exam season, when his quiet admiration first began. During a test, he fumbled through his pencil case and realized with dismay that he had forgotten his eraser. From the neighboring desk, Noah wordlessly extended her hand, offering a tiny animal print eraser with a gentle smile. She explained that she had brought a spare and urged him to take it, her kindness leaving him stunned. Blushing and flustered, he accepted the eraser, thanking her while imprinting the moment deep in his memory. Back in the present, he quietly pulls that same eraser from his pocket, realizing he has kept it as a treasure all this time. Another classmate, Shimura Yu, anxiously asks if he will survive his birthday tomorrow, sweat running down his face. Nobu blurts out that turning 18, while still socially inexperienced, sounds dangerously close to the deadly pattern. Shimura panics, grabbing Irie and begging to know if he is doomed, saying he does not want to die. The three huddle around a desk, trying to reassure him that such a crazy rumor cannot really happen in modern times, though their voices betray doubt. Shimura straightens up with sudden resolve, declaring that he has no choice but to confess his feelings to someone. Eri warns that this might be his one chance, then jokes darkly about asking a girl for something far too blunt, earning an exasperated look from Nobu. Eri insists that Noah is on a different level, comparing her to a rare character in a game that must be carefully timed to obtain. Shimura protests that love is not some gacha system, while Nobu, half amused, half horrified, watches them. Eri retorts that winning her heart would basically require huge emotional in-app purchases anyway. Fired up, Nobu promises to guide Shimura step by step. After school, they will meet in casual clothes and execute a plan to save his life. Noah later smiles warmly at Eri, saying she does not know what he is plotting but trusts him as someone dependable, which only heightens his inner conflict. After school, the boys gather under neon billboards, the city buzzing as they steel themselves for what comes next. Standing in street clothes, Irie confirms that everyone has arrived and that their reckless mission is about to begin. He outlines the so-called Shimura birthday escape operation, treating the evening like a covert campaign. Nobu jumps as Irie turns to him with a suspiciously serious expression. Eri bluntly announces that he needs to collect a 4,000 yen operations fee, leaving Nobu gaping. Their destination turns out to be a shady bathhouse district, one storefront displaying suggestive posters under a glowing sign. Eri slams a wad of bills onto the counter, committing their pooled savings to this desperate gamble. The three boys, dwarfed by the counter, plead with the receptionist to somehow transform Shimura into a proper adult before midnight. The man behind the counter exhales smoke and says he cannot do anything for obvious underage kids. Eri tries to bluff that they are already in college, but the worker dismisses the lie, saying they are clearly too young. Eri leans in, almost tearful, begging the man to bend the rules because Shimura turns 18 in just a few hours. The worker scoffs at the urban legend, insisting no one dies just because they lack certain experiences. Still, out of a hint of sympathy, he offers to share a useful piece of insider information with them. He explains sharply that paying the door fee alone never guarantees anything. There is far more to it than throwing money around. The boys recoil in synchronized shock, their dreams crashing down in an instant. As he shoos them away, he advises them to chase genuine affection instead of treating this like some warped school excursion. Just then, the imposing owner strides in, calling out to the worker with a stern voice. With a cold smirk, the owner announces that from now on, both entry and service fees are skyrocketing exclusively for panicked newcomers. The worker and boys reel at the news, repeating the phrase tenfold in disbelief. Lightning practically crackles behind the owner's gaze as he asks if they understand what is happening in entertainment districts across the nation. He describes how every frightened adult rookie has flooded these places, turning the chaos into an unprecedented financial boom for the industry. Hearing that some have somehow survived past 18, Eri realizes the rumor might not be absolute after all. Nobu tugs his sleeve and urges him to look outside at the street. Out in the alley, sweaty fists clutch thick stacks of cash, knuckles white with desperation. Groups of anxious adults argue loudly over prices, swearing that they refuse to entrust their first real romance to professionals while still roaming between shops. The boys flinch as one of those men suddenly collapses right in front of them, another casualty of the mysterious condition. A strict-looking manager scolds new arrivals, warning them not to lie about having experience just to dodge the surged fees. A flustered salaryman stammers, shocked that she instantly guessed he was inexperienced. The woman coolly replies that she can tell at a glance who is still clueless, her tone dripping with disdain. Watching the three boys retreat, the owner chuckles darkly, sensing that these frightened kids might be walking wallets. He bursts into villainous laughter, declaring that panicked newcomers are practically made of money, and that he intends to squeeze every last coin from them. Later, the boys regroup at a fast food joint called W.C. Donald's, trying to calm down amid the smell of fries and burgers. Nursing a drink, Nobu mutters that life suddenly feels terrifying, while Shimura worries they can never afford the outrageous new prices. Eri remembers hearing that a few people survived past their 18th birthday, wondering if there might be a grace period before the curse takes effect. Relieved for the moment, Nobu brightens, while Shimura begins to consider what this loophole might mean for his own odds of survival. Shimura's eyes glisten as he forces a brave smile, insisting he wants his first serious relationship to be with someone just as inexperienced as himself. Irie and Nobu stare in stunned sympathy, both silently agreeing with that painfully honest wish. Their floating heads hover anxiously as they apologize to Shimura for dragging him around, and wonder what desperate move is left. Irie, expression flat and tired, weakly suggests they try free attempts next, actually attempting to talk to girls on the street. Night falls over Shikijima Research Hospital, a looming building where the truth behind the deaths is being hunted. Inside, the frantic professor barks orders, demanding every sample be rushed and any cause beyond simple inexperience be uncovered. A young researcher hurries up behind him with a clipboard, saying the analysis team has just sent back crucial data. The professor scans the report, sweat forming as he learns that one mysterious factor appeared in every victim's sample. His face fills the panel, eyes bulging in shock as he realizes what the shared element actually is. Over a glittering cityscape, his voice echoes that 17-year-olds across the nation must hear this information immediately. Back in town, Eri broods while Nobu snores beside him, the two slumped on a bench after countless failed approaches. Shimura forces himself to greet another passerby, only to be rudely brushed off as she snaps at him to leave her alone. He checks his phone and pales, the lock screen showing a smiling idol while the time reads 23:54, minutes from his birthday. Behind him, Nobu pumps a trembling fist while Irie tries to smile, both admitting they are exhausted and ready to call it quits. Shimura's back is turned as he quietly thanks them, his voice already sounding like a farewell. He spins around with tears and a crooked grin, declaring that he will die still alone and has accepted that fate. Nobu panics and rushes over, insisting it is only a rumor and begging Shimura not to give up hope. From off-panel, Erie's foot steps forward and his voice cuts in, saying this is not the time to surrender. Erie's eyes blaze in the half-shadow as he reminds them there is still time before midnight and they must use every second. A woman turns, puzzled, as Irie calls out to her with forced politeness. Eri pushes Shimura forward and points, sweating nervously, praising Shimura as a kind guy who just wants a little of her time. The four walk together, Nobu and Eri hyping Shimura's virtues, how long they have been friends and how tender-hearted he is. Flashbacks show childhood days where Shimura patiently lent games and waited for Nobu before tests, proving his gentle nature. As Nobu continues praising him, Shimura reaches toward the girl's shoulder, trying to stop this snowballing conversation. She suddenly strides ahead and, over her shoulder, dryly suggests Nobu should date this so-called great guy himself. Later, Shimura slumps in defeat while Eri clenches a fist, promising they will keep trying until Eri also finds someone. A sharp voice from behind makes them flinch as a newcomer calls out to the trio. Nobu smiles gently, reminding them that they are in this together, the three of them will survive or fall as one unit. Irie's eyes soften and he blushes, touched that Nobu still stands by him. Their moment is cut short when a police officer appears, suspiciously asking why high school kids are out so late. Under a giant countdown screen, Eri tries to laugh it off while Nobu blurts out that Shimura's deadly birthday is just hours away. The officer suggests they all head to the nearby police box, saying they need to see the breaking news about the crisis. A horrifying close-up of Shimura's contorted face shows the instant the clock hits midnight and his body fails. From above, his lifeless form sprawls on the pavement as Eri, Nobu, and the officer stare in paralyzed horror. Protest signs fill the frame demanding protection for isolated youth under a controversial reform movement. At the National Diet Building, a reporter describes how the so-called DTG genocide has triggered chaos between victims and critics. In the crowd, terrified men wail that they are being abandoned and beg to be saved before it is too late. A shout announces yet another wave of sudden deaths ripping through the demonstration, raising fury at the government's inaction. Daytime city streets seem almost normal, but an invisible dread hangs over the busy intersection. A signboard reading, "Closed for the night," mocks desperate customers, symbolizing how every option keeps vanishing. A nervous 20-year-old man confesses to the camera that he still has no idea when his own countdown will end. A girl facing him bluntly asks if he is inexperienced, making a bead of sweat roll down his cheek. She smiles sweetly in a school uniform, the scene feeling strangely calm despite her probing question. With a teasing look, she offers to solve his situation for a price, her tone disturbingly sweet. The man leans forward, stunned, as she mentions she only needs money for a private arrangement and vague expenses. Her eyes gleam as she flashes a peace sign and demands an outrageous price, 2 million yen. Meanwhile, the government's DTG countermeasures team convenes, grimly discussing how the crisis keeps spiraling. One official, sweating, yells that they cannot just wait for research while panic and death keep spreading. Another calmly counters that their best expert at Shikishima Hospital is close to discovering the cause, so patience is vital. A third insists that coordinated efforts with private businesses could erase the problem entirely by removing everyone's status. Yet another bureaucrat notes with alarm that shady arrangements and exploitative dates are already charging millions per meeting. A member slams the table, outraged that the situation has devolved into a 2 million yen market of fear and exploitation. The Prime Minister grimaces, appalled that street prices have shot up 10,000%, then suspiciously asks why his aide even knows that. Outside the chamber, a wide shot shows crumbling social order as officials argue that victims now die from despair and accidents as well. A newspaper editor skims a headline about compensated dating scams and mutters that the country is finished. A small memorial desk in the classroom quietly notes that Shimura passed away due to the mysterious condition, his funeral still pending. Classmates gossip cruelly about whose birthdays are next, casually predicting more deaths among shy students. One boy lowers his head, half relieved and half ashamed that he personally is not at risk. For now. Shimura's distorted face flashes in Kurumi's imagination, reminding him he has only 4 months left under the same threat. Kurumi bends over in the dark hallway, mind spinning as he wonders what path he can possibly take. He suddenly remembers that Nobu's birthday is in late July, meaning Nobu's deadline is even closer than his own. Later, Kurumi calls out to Nobu, but Nobu walks ahead with a heavy back, already drowning in fear. Nobu's profile is drenched in shadow as he whispers that at this rate he is going to die as well. Moments later, he erupts, shouting to the empty corridor that he is absolutely not inexperienced and therefore completely safe. His outburst echoes into a nightmare vision of classmates jeering, labeling him contagious and mocking him for his reputation. Irie reaches toward him as Nobu bolts from the room, unable to bear the humiliation. Irie's hand hangs in midair while he calls after him, saying Nobu has misunderstood everything. Alone at his desk, Irie clenches a fist and finally admits aloud that he lacks relationship experience too. Rain pours over a dark apartment block, mirroring the hopelessness settling inside Irie's chest. Inside his home, a relative comments sadly about Morikubo's supposed death, mixing up the victims. Irie corrects her irritably over dinner, saying it was Shimura who died and begging her to treat the situation seriously. The same panel lingers from another angle, emphasizing how casually adults keep confusing the names. His mother falls silent, then suddenly blurts out the word inexperienced, before nervously asking if he is really going to be okay. Irie freezes mid-bite, sweat beading on his face as he realizes the conversation has cornered him. His mouth curls slightly as he whispers no under his breath. Then he forces a shaky smile, claiming he already has experience and there is nothing to worry about. His mother instantly calls him a liar and, furious, demands that he stop treating the crisis like some joke. She leans forward in panic, yelling that staying inexperienced means certain death, and he must take this seriously. Her face contorts as she shouts that he has never once mentioned dating anyone, so how could his claim be true? Irie slams his palm on the table and yells that he will figure something out within the next 4 months. She fires back that hiring a professional is the obvious solution, while he shouts he refuses and wants something genuine instead. Both sit at the table breathing hard, their argument hanging in the air like smoke. In hysterical desperation, she suggests finding someone suitable immediately, her words crossing into deeply uncomfortable territory. She doubles down with frantic resolve, insisting she will do anything to ensure he survives. Irie's pupils shrink in absolute horror, lightning of shock slicing across the panel. He bolts from the apartment, screaming as his mother calls after him, while the absurd proposal echoes behind. Outside in the downpour, he sprints through the streets, shouting that this is the worst possible turn his life could take. Rain pelts his face as he curses the world itself, unable to believe how twisted everything has become. The camera widens to show his small figure running alone, ranting that he should not have to risk death just because of inexperience. Tears mix with rain as he cries out for everyone to stop looking down on him and treating him like a joke. His mother's awful line, "Let your mom take care of it," rings again over an empty sky filled with flowers, like a mocking epitaph. Something snaps inside Eri. With a manic smile in the rain, he decides he must find someone, anyone, willing to accept him tonight. He storms up to an apartment door, soaked, as a surprised girl slides it open. Amemiya blinks in shock at the drenched boy on her doorstep, recognizing her classmate through the curtain of rain. She fusses over him, assuming he is just troubled, and invites him in while asking what could be wrong at this hour. Kurumi stammers as she offers to fetch a towel, his panic building as he realizes this is his only chance. Grabbing her sleeve with trembling hands, he blurts out a confession, telling her he has fallen in love with her. Her eyes widen to massive circles, mind blanking at the sudden, heartfelt declaration. He then, red-faced and desperate, begs her to stand by him and help him face the coming months together. He explains through clenched teeth that the rumor is real, and if nothing changes by August, he may suffer the same fate as Shimura. In his panic, he says he feels trapped between his fear of dying and the pressure at home. Amamiya stands in the doorway in an oversized sweater, staring at him with a blank, unreadable face. Her eyes narrow in close-up as she quietly wonders if he really thought she would just accept that plea. Kurumi flails his hands, stammering that he just thought trying desperately to stop her rising anger. With her back turned, she accuses him of treating her like a convenient option, acting like her feelings never mattered, and assuming she would agree just to save him. She smiles too brightly, calmly saying that selfish mindset is exactly why he is still inexperienced. He blocks the doorway, insisting he truly loves her and is not just driven by impulse, begging her to wait. Tears mix with rain as he cries that he feels his entire future depends on this moment. Turning away again, she admits she had thought he might be a decent guy, just a little. Then, wearing an angelic smile, she cheerfully says it would be better if he died and slides the door shut. Kurumi stands frozen in the downpour before the closed door, the sound of rain swallowing him. A furious voice nearby calls him pathetic, accusing him of ruining everything. An older coworker under an umbrella glares and tells him to stay away. Another drenched man kicks toward Kurumi, yelling that his desperate behavior is unacceptable. The woman angrily says he completely misunderstood her kindness at work. The glasses man mutters that this kind of behavior makes him uncomfortable and wishes the situation would just end. Kurumi snaps, swinging a large signboard and knocking both of them off their feet in a splash of rain. Standing over them with the sign, he shouts that no one has the right to look down on Nobu like that. He pants, explaining Nobu's awkward approach as simple inexperience and nothing worth this level of mockery. Veins bulging, Kurumi screams that he is inexperienced too, that there's nothing wrong with that, and hurls an insult back at the woman. Her response is a brutal kick to his face, sending him flying and cutting his tirade short. Later, Kurumi and Nobu lie sprawled on the wet pavement, dazed, admitting they are both pathetic wimps. Staring up into the rain, Nobu groans that the woman was actually his senior at his part-time job who does mixed martial arts for fun. Kurumi, still flat on his back, mutters that hearing that detail somehow just makes everything worse. From off-screen, Kurumi weakly tells Nobu to aim higher next time, maybe for someone whose hobbies are less terrifying. Nobu stands while Kurumi kneels, both soaked, wincing over how it hurt to be told he could not even confess properly. Kurumi looks up at his friend and quietly asks if he truly is still inexperienced. Turning his back, Nobu admits he lied earlier and apologizes, unable to meet Kurumi's eyes. Nobu then extends a hand with a determined smile, suggesting they overcome their inexperience together. The two boys clasp hands in a halo of streetlights and rain, shouting that they will face it together. Later, at a public bath, the pair sit wrapped in towels, Nobu marveling that Amamiya rejected Kurumi so completely. He clarifies that what really stunned him was Kurumi's mother offering herself as a last resort, calling it unbelievable. Kurumi flails in the steamy air, howling that the whole thing is the absolute worst, just as his phone begins to ring. Both boys' heads float comically beside a scale as Kurumi gulps that it is his mother calling. Nobu yelps in alarm. Kurumi answers nervously, whispering a greeting while his mother's panicked voice shouts his name. Sitting on the locker room bench, he explains that he cannot come home yet, apologizing as Nobu watches. On the other end, his mother clutches her phone, insisting that is not the point at all. Tears in her eyes, she begs him to return to her, calling him her precious Irie and sounding on the verge of collapse. Her thumb hovers near the phone's lower edge while she starts to say something horrifyingly suggestive about where he came from. Kurumi and Nobu recoil from the screen, shouting in shared panic that she is still stuck on that awful idea. Outside the bathhouse, Nobu yells that Eri should come hide at his place where no mothers await, while Kurumi despairs over his ruined family. A nighttime shot of the Morikubo residence shows the quiet, old-fashioned house where Nobu lives. At the open doorway, both boys stare inside with wide, exhausted eyes, bracing for whatever awaits. A low table in a tatami room displays a cushion embroidered with ominous characters, hinting at some family ritual. Nobu's grandmother appears in formal robes, smiling serenely as she says she has awaited his return, and urges him to prepare for what must be done to keep him alive. Nobu sweats and stammers, pointing at her in horror as he tries to protest. She calmly holds up a small sealed packet, saying they must be careful and keep everything safe, her tone disturbingly matter-of-fact. Terrified, the boys bolt down a hallway as the grandmother calls that Nobu's friend is welcome to join this solution as well. Nobu flings open a side door and shouts for Kurumi to hurry inside, desperately trying to escape. Inside a shed, they huddle before a TV as a grainy, ghost-like image of the grandmother fills the screen, chanting ominously. Her face fades from the static, intoning that once Nobu has steeled his resolve, he must return to her. Outside, she exits a small prefab hut muttering that he apparently cannot come back until he has shed his inexperience somewhere. Elsewhere, the DTG countermeasures team sits around a conference table, reviewing data that says 5 million people died on outbreak day and millions more remain at risk. On the broadcast, Professor Shikishima appears with wild hair as presenters casually nickname him Professor Virgin, while he corrects them and introduces himself. Spreading charts, he announces their research shows every victim had the same cellular abnormality, and asks everyone to look at the monitor. Beside a grotesque slide of a diseased cell, he explains that a sudden mutation, dubbed the DTG cell, has been identified. In close-up, he states that when the cell warps into a cherry-like shape, the only symptom is instant death, stunning the room. Continuing, he says they still do not know why the mutation happens, but stress that it appears only in inexperienced adult males. A clinical room shows a nervous couple in gowns while Shikishima explains that genuine physical intimacy seems to erase DTG cells completely. He adds that, confusingly, some men over 18 remain alive while still inexperienced, meaning the cause is not fully understood. A stern official rises from the audience and asks if solitary release would count as sufficient activity for the cure. Shikishima's eye hardens as he snaps that the answer is absolutely no. Back in the countermeasures room, an official says their top priority is spreading this information to calm those who already meet the safe criteria. Another slams a palm on the desk, shouting that publicizing this is too dangerous. The stern woman warns that men facing certain death might lash out at women, turning their fear into violence. She concludes coldly that these inexperienced men themselves are becoming a social threat. That night, Kurumi and Nobu lie side by side in futons in the shed, Kurumi noting it is convenient to have a separate hideout from the main house. Staring at the ceiling, Kurumi asks if Nobu really liked that older coworker he just got kicked by. Nobu admits he liked her a little, mainly because she treated him kindly, and assumed that meant she would accept his clumsy attempt. A memory of Amamiya smiling surfaces as Kurumi quietly affirms that he genuinely loves her. He reflects that he made Amamiya think he cared only about using her, and wonders if their feelings ever could have aligned. His gaze sharpens as he thinks bitterly that he does not have time to pursue every normal dating step with her. A dark fantasy shows younger Kurumi and Amamiya standing together, his thoughts insisting she should at least accept him once to save his life. The daydream twists into an image of her flushed and gripping the sheets while he imagines both of them relieved and himself spared from death. Back in the vision, he stares down in frustration, demanding to know why she cannot just understand his desperation. Amamiya's earlier bright smile flashes again in his memory, repeating that this entitled thinking is exactly why he is still inexperienced. Kurumi jolts awake in the futon, eyes wide and sweating, shaken by the cruel echo of her words. He sits up while Nobu sleeps peacefully beside him, pulling the blanket away as if ready to move. The next morning, an exterior shot shows Kurumi approaching his own apartment building cautiously. In a rush of motion lines, he runs while lugging a stuffed duffel bag, face tight with anxiety. From the shadowed entrance, Nobu spots him and calls out in relief. Catching his breath, Kurumi says he is glad Nobu is safe, while Nobu answers with a tired nod. A view of Kurumi's empty room accompanies his narration that his mother was asleep, so he managed to grab clothes and essentials. On the desk sits a note addressed to his mother, apologizing and saying he will not be coming home for a while. Kurumi looks up at another tall apartment tower, symbolizing how far he feels from any normal life. Walking beside Nobu, he steels himself with the grim thought that he cannot return home until he sheds his inexperience. A new day reveals the closed gates of their high school, now a battleground of hidden deadlines and fear. Inside, the two boys walk the hallway when Kurumi suddenly stiffens, sensing someone ahead. Up ahead, Amamiya strolls with another girl in her blazer and skirt, chatting casually. Kurumi abruptly darts away, telling Nobu he has something to do and cannot head to class yet. Alone by a side path, he paces and wonders how he should even begin approaching Amamiya now. His expression blanks as his inner voice screams a crude plea, revealing just how frantic and irrational he has become. From around the corner, he hears a girl pleading for someone to stop, her voice small and frightened. Peeking into a narrow passage, he sees a classmate girl facing a desperate boy who confesses that tomorrow is his birthday and he is almost out of time. Kurumi recognizes both Minamikata from his class and the panicked Ida, realizing he has stumbled onto another deadline. Minamikata trembles yet firmly says she refuses to be that close with someone she is not even dating. Ida, flushed and sweating, blurts that they should just start going out then, as if that solves everything. She frowns, saying that is not the issue at all, and admits his raw desperation is scaring her. In a sudden, reckless move, he steps too close and clearly invades her personal space. Realizing his mistake instantly, he apologizes repeatedly as she recoils in shock. She slaps him across the face the moment his panicked action crosses a clear boundary. She glares through her glasses, insisting she already refused and that everything has gone far beyond acceptable. A smug upperclassman girl smirks darkly, accusing Ida of being willing with others but suddenly refusing her. Ida flinches as the accusation continues, the senior spitefully bringing up a rumored fling with Nagata. The older girl corners Ida against the chain fence, leaning in as Ida stiffens in frightened confusion. The senior's eyes gleam as she reveals she secretly watched Ida in the athletics shed before. She presses closer, sneering that a plain, serious girl like Ida must be strangely attached to Nagata despite his flaws. Her hand slides up Ida's front, claiming time with her would be far better than with Nagata and asking if she would really let her die. Kurumi watches from hiding, shaken as he thinks bitterly that he never knew Ida could be this cold. Yet his eye tightens, unable to bear seeing Ida pressured like this despite his own survival fears. He steps out and calls Ida's name, drawing both girls' startled attention to him. The senior turns in disbelief as Kurumi approaches, her expression twisting when she recognizes him. Kurumi lowers his gaze, struggling for words about what intimacy truly means. He finally cries out that it is something impossible without trust between two people, not a tool for one person's escape. Voice cracking, he declares no one should demand it selfishly just to save themselves. Minamikata bristles, asking what nonsense Kurumi is talking about, while Ida listens wide-eyed. Ida gathers her courage and calmly states that despite Nagata's flaws, she genuinely loves him. Facing Minamikata fully, she explains that Nagata may be flashy but he makes her heart race and sees her true self. She adds firmly that Nagata never treats her like an object, unlike the way Minamikata is acting now. Minamikata explodes, demanding if she really thinks he is worse than Nagata just because of his gloomy nature and inexperience. He rants that he studies harder and has better prospects, insisting that on paper he should clearly be superior. Ida quietly asks if he even thought about the serious consequences of what he was demanding. He stammers in disbelief as she bluntly clarifies, exposing how recklessly unprepared he is. She explains that reckless decisions could create serious lifelong responsibilities neither of them is ready for. Minamikata freezes as the weight of potential consequences crashes into him. Images rush through his thoughts, extending his life yet suddenly being responsible forever if something happens. Ida smiles politely but sharply, asking if he could truly support a child right now. He collapses into panic babbling, horrified at the idea of work and lifelong responsibility. His face twists as he screams that he does not even want to get a job yet. Afterward, Kurumi approaches the shaken Ida from behind and gently asks if she is all right. Elsewhere, Minamikata trembles alone, cursing his situation and his own powerlessness through clenched teeth. Later, in Nobu's room, Nobu recounts how Minamikata acted at school as if none of this had happened, leaving them stunned. Ida lies on her futon with eyes half shut, wondering aloud how many desperate men across Japan are turning violent like him. Kurumi admits it is at least useful to learn from Minamikata's catastrophic example, even as the boy's contorted face haunts him. Nobu suddenly calls Kurumi over, excitedly shoving his phone forward. On screen, Minamikata appears in a live stream, sitting rigidly on his bed under the word live. He stares into the camera and introduces himself shakily as a doomed, inexperienced streamer broadcasting his final hours. Kurumi and Nobu gape at the term DTuber, horrified. This is really Minamika's plan. He announces he will stream until midnight, confronting the condition head-on. In a new chapter title frame, he formally introduces himself as Minamikata Shoma, model student of class 3-3. A wide shot shows him surrounded by a messy room, explaining he lived dutifully and now intends to throw that image away. He rips open his uniform, proudly displaying a crude tattoo of Ida's name carved across his chest. Kurumi and Nobu huddle near the phone, realizing in alarm that Minamikata has crossed a point of no return. On stream, Minamikata screams that he is about to die, his eyes bulging with terror. He roars that his isolation and lack of connection pushed him toward despair, his words echoing with bitterness. A flashback shows him slumped outside his upscale home, muttering that everything has always felt meaningless. Young Shoma sits at the entryway, pleading to go play, while a parent's legs loom over him forbiddingly. His mother's severe face fills the frame as she calls neighborhood kids worthless and orders him to study as the family heir. School records and a stern teacher illustrate how he chased top scores for years without ever choosing for himself. He remembers classmates laughing, his own awkward expression splitting between envy and forced indifference. Other boys mock Nagata's poor grades while Minamikata turns away, silently despising their carefree attitudes. He walks the hallway alone, promising himself he will become the perfect, studious partner Ida deserves. A ranking board shows Minamikata at the very top, with Ida listed just beneath him. He proudly notes he held first place again with Ida second, convinced this proves their compatibility. Smiling, he glances at Ida near the board, already imagining their future together. In his fantasy, she seems the ideal match for a brilliant man like him, and he vows they will marry someday. He calls out casually to her in the hallway, expecting an easy conversation. Instead, he finds her happily chatting with Nagata, the supposed slacker now ranked second beside her. Minamikata stiffens in the background, stunned that Ida is walking with someone he considers beneath her. He watches in disbelief as Ida and Nagata smile warmly and intertwine their hands. Later, he peers into the equipment room, hearing muffled sounds and imagining carefree couples everywhere but him. At the warehouse doorway, his thoughts see that smooth talkers will always claim happiness while he is left behind. His shadowed face twists as he decides a bookish loner like him is destined to die untouched. Back in his room, his inner voice spews bitter claims about Ida only liking friendly normal guys, not someone like him. An image of ant and grasshopper appears in his mind, framing Ida as someone who chose fleeting fun over steady effort. The vision darkens into a crushed ant, and he labels himself the one stomped out before ever reaching winter. On stream again, he screams at the camera that rejection and isolation pushed him over the edge. He holds up a photo of Ida, blaming her unfairly for his emotional collapse. The camera lingers as he vows she will remember him, even if his actions are misguided. Minamikata sits rigidly, confessing he wanted to drag her down with him but could not bring himself to actually harm her. Instead, he raises a small ring to the lens and announces a twisted, desperate proposal. Smiling weakly, he vows into the tablet that as her husband he will watch over her forever, even in imagined marriage vows. A close-up shows a hand elsewhere sliding a ring onto a finger, echoing his delusional promise. A digital clock flips to midnight, signaling his 18th birthday and the moment he has been dreading. Minamikata convulses in terror as the clock strikes 12, his body giving out under the mutation. He points shakily at the camera, begging Ida not to forget him and reminding her he even bought a ring. His mother bursts in screaming as he collapses, the broadcast dissolving into chaos. Watching the stream, Kurumi weakly tells Nobu to shut it off while background voices panic and call family over. Nobu, shaken, mentions the video from when Minamikata tried to force Ida, realizing how long this path has built. Kurumi walks down the hallway afterward, wondering if Minamikata would have gone further that day without his intervention. Nobu answers quietly that nobody can know for sure. He then states firmly that stopping Minamikata back then was the right thing, because what he attempted was clearly a crime. They sit facing each other on the bed as Nobu adds that Minamikata was too arrogant to ever find someone in time anyway. Nobu's expression turns conflicted as he asks how anyone is supposed to respond when someone's literal survival is on the line. Outside their window, the night sky hangs heavy as Nobu admits this whole situation makes him resent Ida a little. The next day, a sign for Classroom 3-3 marks the stage where whispers about the stream now swirl. On Ida's desk sits a small jewelry box, its lid open to reveal Minamikata's ring glinting softly. Ida stands frozen in front of it, stunned that the symbol of his obsession has reached her. She bows her head as classmates surround her desk, the ring glowing at the center of the tense circle. Suddenly, she slams her hand down, toppling the box as she cries out in denial. Across the room, Kurumi and the other boys stare in grim silence, feeling the weight of Minamikata's final act. Ida's friend approaches with a hard look, bluntly saying Ida should have just given Minamikata what he wanted. A bespectacled boy joins in angrily, arguing Minamikata had not asked for much and that Ida is not even inexperienced. Ida fires back, shouting that her feelings matter and she could never agree to something so serious without love. 3 girls rush to her side, scolding the boys and insisting no one has the right to blame Ida for their own fear. Nobu suddenly yells that the real problem is girls refusing to help, openly venting his own frustration. He turns to Kurumi for support, but Kurumi recoils, begging not to be dragged into the argument. Kurumi flinches as Nobu grabs his shoulder, only to see Amamiya standing nearby with arms crossed, watching. A close-up of Amamiya's face shows her gaze icy and unreadable as she takes in everything Kurumi's friend has just shouted. Her expression hardens, the quiet fury in her eyes promising that Kurumi will have to answer for where he stands. Kurumi reels inside, certain Amamiya's opinion of him is sinking lower with every furious shout. He tries to interject, voice breaking as he begs everyone to stop before it gets worse. Nagata steps forward with a weighted gaze, calling Kurumi's name like a slow warning beat. He turns to the shaken Aida, sharply condemning Minamikata for exposing her private life. Standing close, he checks on her with quiet care, and she answers that she is still managing. Nagata spreads his arms like a shield, barking that no one is allowed to bother or corner her again. Kurumi backs him up, insisting everyone needs to calm down before the whole thing explodes. A classmate calls Kurumi from behind, dragging his attention away from the brewing fight. Nagata studies Kurumi's expression, calmly claiming he can tell Kurumi is inexperienced as well. Kurumi jolts in panic, cold sweat bursting out as the accusation crashes over him. Whispers coil around him as classmates spread rumors, twisting his confession to Amamiya into something cheap. Elsewhere, a girl snaps that no inexperienced boys should be allowed near her, demanding they be driven out. 2 smug guys jeer at the shunned boys, mocking them as pathetic and unworthy of even showing their faces. Kurumi and another boy repeat the insult in disbelief, stunned by how lightly it is thrown at them. Ida quietly mouths the cruel phrase to herself, the words clinging to her heart like a dark stain. More girls murmur harsh labels under their breath, the tension thick in the room. Soon the room erupts into a storm of accusations, voices blending into a cruel chorus. Kurumi drops to his knees as the hostility overwhelms him from every direction. He bows under the pounding taunts, the narration insisting their suffering stems from their social isolation alone. A door sign for the DTG countermeasures team suggests adults are scrambling for desperate answers. A government official slams his desk, demanding that socially isolated students be separated from the others. Another official protests sharply, calling it unbearably inhuman to isolate people over something so private. Around the table, someone timidly floats an alternative before the meeting crosses a point of no return. A self-satisfied politician proposes gathering them for mandatory intervention sessions instead of letting panic spread. A comedic extra sequence begins, introducing the mangaka and his editor in light-hearted portrait panels. The editor recalls their first meeting, asking plainly what kind of story the artist wants to create. The mangaka rattles off wild pitches like assassins and eccentric honor students, chasing a solid hook. The seal editor sighs in narration, wondering if their brainstorming session will last until dawn. The mangaka finally tosses the question back, asking what kind of manga the editor truly wants. The editor calmly proposes a story where every inexperienced person in Japan suddenly begins to die. The artist sits in stunned silence, vowing to at least consider that outrageous idea, as narration says that was the beginning. A TV debate shows one commentator calling socially isolated men defective, prompting another to demand a retraction. A later broadcast reports that same journalist has been murdered, his natural selection line turned back on him. A censored mother on the news admits she hopes her 14-year-old son gains experience before entering high school. In a grand office, an aide anxiously asks the national leader how they should respond to the spreading crisis. A foreign president on screen declares the so-called Japanese isolation crisis intolerable. He pushes further, ordering a halt to all travel to and from Japan until the issue is resolved. The Japanese leader jolts to his feet, pleading for time, but the call cuts out mid-sentence. Officials stare up at a huge monitor reading Cal ended, stunned by the blunt diplomatic blow. An exhausted bureaucrat drops his head to the table, warned that total international isolation looms unless something changes. On his desk sits a thick dossier titled National Social Stabilization Plan, filled with strict emergency proposals. Narration explains that school life warped completely in the wake of the Minamikata incident. In the hallway, Kurumi and Nobu pass by girls, the air between them dense with unspoken scorn. A girl lightly bumps Kurumi, giving an awkward smile as she tosses him a quick apology. Kurumi bows back, apologizing even more, desperate not to cause the slightest friction. The girl recoils with a shriek, loudly branding them as outcasts like some kind of contamination. She and her friends scamper away laughing, joking they need to wash off before catching an imaginary disease. Kurumi and Nobu slog down the corridor, narration saying their status now ranks below even slugs. In class, girls glare toward a seated girl while boys wait uneasily clustered in the doorway. The room splits along invisible borders, groups separating as if an unseen illness divides them. Nagata sits with arms folded while Ida stands beside him, both watching their classmates with guarded caution. At her own desk, Amamiya glances over, her attention quietly snagged by Kurumi. Kurumi studies her from across the room, thinking she still seems severe and intimidating. He greets the three other ostracized boys, their desks scrawled over with hateful graffiti. A bird's eye shot labels their corner the so-called isolation zone, cut off from the rest of the class. Kurumi addresses the photos and flowers on 2 empty desks, relieved the remaining 2 still managed to attend. A chubby boy named Baki calmly says he now focuses only on exams but does not want their tiny group to shrink again. The brooding Shirajiku scoffs that exams feel pointless when they might not live long enough to sit them. Nobu leans in, asking if they do not find their entire situation strangely absurd. Another boy calculates aloud that out of 30 classmates, only 4 inexperienced boys remain after 2 deaths. Nobu decides there must be hidden virgins pretending otherwise, and the others mutter that it actually sounds likely. Kurumi cuts into the guessing, asking Nobu to stop stirring things up and mocking their classmates. 2 popular boys, Kira and Mizuhashi, turn with sharp grins when Kurumi's rebuke reaches them. They warn that he is only tolerated by their goodwill and suggest he behave if he wants to avoid trouble. Nobu fires back, claiming worldly students like them are poisoning what should be their best school years. Kurumi begs Nobu to let it go, while Mizuhashi demands to know if Kurumi plans to start a fight. Mizuhashi suddenly boots Kurumi's desk aside, yelling that Kurumi is actually the most resentful one of all. Kurumi's bag slams to the floor, textbooks and his pencil case spilling across the tiles. A small eraser skitters free, bouncing away from the scattered mess. It rolls to a stop at Amamiya's feet, drawing her gaze as she works at her desk. She recognizes it instantly as the eraser she once gave Kurumi, memories flashing in her widened eyes. A montage of panels shows Mizuhashi raging that Kurumi tried too hard to act above the other virgins. Pinning Kurumi, Mizuhashi demands to know if he would have kept pretending to be experienced if no one exposed him. Kurumi later sits on the floor, Mizuhashi's taunts about his boastful 6th grade claim still hanging in the air. Kurumi forces a crooked smile, admitting he now regrets trying to act cool and seasoned. He says he has noticed things in himself that need work and even learned a little more about girls through everything. Mizuhashi groans in frustration, begging him to stop acting like some wise mentor when he has never even held a girl's hand. Another boy chimes in that Kurumi cannot talk like that unless he is as experienced as the infamous Kira. Kira proudly boasts about a wild night, exaggerating details to impress everyone. He pulls back his sleeve to show a dark bruise on his arm, trying to use it as proof. Mizuhashi barks a laugh, asking if this is supposed to be some kind of joke as a tiny Kurumi face watches baffled. Mizuhashi then squints in doubt, asking if Kira is honestly serious about this proof. Ida cuts in calmly, saying what he is flaunting does not match what those marks actually look like. She explains calmly that the mark is just a bruise from pressure, nothing extraordinary. The boys gape together in stunned silence, their fantasy of a cool adult world collapsing. Nagata begins to ask if that means Ida herself might still be inexperienced, before letting the thought die. Kira stammers in protest, while Mizuhashi jokes that he must have drawn the bruise on himself. Something small slips from Kira's pocket, briefly unnoticed amid the noise. It hits the floor, a metal tube like a marker case, rolling accusingly to a stop at his feet. Kurumi, Mizuhashi, and Kira stare in frozen dread as the truth dawns on the room. Mizuhashi erupts, shouting that Kira has been faking everything and is actually inexperienced himself. Kira reaches out in panic, insisting he can explain, but fear wobbles through his voice. Mizuhashi jerks back, refusing to let Kira touch him and spitting that he is disgusting. Nobu glares at Kira's back, quietly demanding an apology as the self-styled expert staggers away. He raises his voice, ordering Kira to apologize to all of them, savoring the sudden reversal of power. A hurled book smacks the wall near Kira's head as he flinches, Kurumi watching in alarm. Shirajiku and Baki fling more objects, screaming insults and vowing never to forgive such a fraud. Kurumi stands in the center as textbooks whip past, the word apologize pounding from every direction. Elsewhere, other students snicker online, turning Kira's downfall into a viral joke about a fake playboy. Kurumi's eyes widen as he recalls Minamikata's relieved smile, realizing with dread that he too is hurtling toward a lonely death. Kurumi shoves Mizuhashi back and orders everyone to stop mocking Kira. A classmate jabs a finger at Kurumi, accusing him of defending Kira only because he once lied too. Kurumi lowers his gaze, uncertain, admitting even he does not know why he is stepping in. He turns to Kira with a steady gaze and quietly asks whether Kira had simply been afraid. Kurumi recalls Kira bragging in the arcade, awkwardly inflating his own record to impress friends. Narration explains that boys like them obsess over grown-up marks they do not truly understand, forever stuck on the outside. Kurumi clenches his fist and declares he has accepted being inexperienced instead of faking confidence. The three ostracized boys watch him, telling each other to stay calm despite the chaos. A shattered memorial frame lies on a desk as Kurumi states Kira is clearly infected by the same curse. Nearby students whisper that Kurumi's speech was cringeworthy yet strangely cool to witness. The school bell tolls noon from a hallway clock, signaling the lunch break. Nobu heads off for food while Kurumi stays behind, saying he will catch up later. Kurumi rummages through his bag and realizes Amamiya's old eraser has gone missing. A hand silently extends the small animal print eraser toward him from behind. Kurumi looks up in surprise to see a girl standing right beside his desk. Amamiya stands there, holding out the eraser as Kurumi murmurs her name. She turns to the window and calmly asks Kurumi to follow her for a moment. The scene cuts to the chained rooftop door marked off-limits to students. Amamiya steps out onto the empty rooftop, remarking she has never come up here. With the wind blowing, she explains the broken lock keeps the place secret and quiet. Kurumi blurts out an apology, bowing and startling her with his sudden shout. Amamiya admits she never properly apologized for the embarrassing commotion back then. She tells him he always storms in to protect others and ends up making things messier. A flashback shows middle school Amamiya panicking as something small falls from her bag. The camera focuses on a shiny heart pattern packet landing on the classroom floor. Classmates gape and shout that an embarrassing item has dropped from Amamiya's bag. A memory shows her older sister teasingly slipping that packet into Amamiya's belongings. Classmates bombard her with embarrassing questions about her private life. One boy bends down to snatch the packet while Amamiya freezes in horror. He waves it around while making exaggerated accusations about her dating life. Kurumi suddenly appears, grabs it, and calmly insists the item actually belongs to him. Two boys crowd him, suspiciously asking how it could have ended up under Amamiya's desk. They gape, demanding to know why a neighbor girl would give Kurumi such a thing. Young Kurumi forces a smug smile and claims he is more mature than they think. Amamiya watches as the boys press him for details, while he improvises a story. In the memory, she shyly thanks him under her breath for taking the blame. Back on the rooftop, Amamiya says she had assumed she only complicated Kurumi's life. She suddenly asks if he wants to face adulthood with her instead of waiting for fate. A closer shot shows her repeating the question, eyes searching his face with resolve. Kurumi stares blankly, then his pupils shrink as the weight of her offer hits him. Amamiya flails her arms, demanding to know what part of her words he does not understand. Their tiny chibi heads argue as she insists the offer means whatever he hopes it does. Amamiya leans in, pleading for him to focus and listen to what she is really saying. Grabbing his hands, she blurts out that she wants to move forward into adulthood together. She frowns, clarifying she is not joking and that his evasive answers are angering her. She steps closer, confessing she had once misjudged him as selfish. She recalls the moment he shielded Kira, realizing then that she had been wrong. Smiling softly, Amamiya tells Kurumi he is actually incredibly considerate of others. Kurumi remembers her tearful younger self and concludes she had only been scared back then. Amamiya clasps his hands and vows that this time it is her turn to protect him. She holds out the small packet as a symbolic gesture of growing up together. The two stand holding each other amid swirling leaves as she suggests trading those fears away. A close-up of Kurumi's trembling hand introduces him formally as a 17-year-old. Narration proclaims that Kurumi Eri stands on the brink of finally stepping beyond his old label. From a distance the pair stand close, both overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the moment. A memory of Amamiya smiling in her old uniform flashes through his mind. Amamiya looks up at him, cheeks flushed, hesitantly asking if they should move forward. Kurumi swallows hard as the tension between them lingers silently. She clings tighter, determined to stand beside him through everything. Kurumi's thoughts echo that she is doing all this purely to save him from despair. From above, The two small figures hold each other while Kurumi questions if this is right. He gently pushes back, apologizing and admitting that something still feels off. Kurumi recalls how claiming that packet let him fake maturity, only to hurt others later. He admits he got drunk on the feeling of being above the other outcasts and blames himself. Facing Amamiya squarely, he says their feelings must be mutual, not fueled by obligation. She protests that if they hesitate, the condition might still take his life. He cries out that he cannot betray his own feelings just to survive. Kurumi declares he truly loves Amamiya and wants to move forward properly if she returns that love. Amamiya stares at him, stunned, as her face slowly reddens with emotion. Over a view of the city, she calls him strange but in a way she cannot dislike. Her hand rests lightly on his chest as she tells him not to worry. Amamiya throws herself at him, shouting that she really does care about him. Outside the school, another girl dashes away screaming while a distressed boy chases her. Students shout that a panicked outcast is losing control across the grounds. A dart suddenly slams into the running boy's neck, dropping him mid-charge. His body skids across the concrete as the terrified girl keeps running. Kurumi and Amamiya watch in horror, realizing someone has just fired on the student. They whirl toward the sky, startled by an intense mechanical roar. A looming tilt-rotor aircraft descends, a voice ordering everyone not to resist. The massive craft hovers right over the rooftop, wind blasting the two students. Kurumi squints at the markings and cries out that it belongs to the U.S. military. Multiple aircraft thunder over the school as other students stare up in disbelief. Outside the gate, armored vehicles roll in while a girl cowers on the pavement. A female officer stands atop an armored car and announces that their mission has begun. She jumps down, smiling gently as she asks the frightened girl if she is unharmed. The girl backs away, demanding to know what these uniformed strangers even are. The officer points at the fallen boy and explains it was only a tranquilizer dart. From a helicopter door, a sniper lowers his rifle after confirming the area is secure. The officer tests her loudspeaker, then calls for the attention of every isolated student. Beaming, she announces over the megaphone that her unit has come to rescue them. She proudly identifies their squad as a specialized emergency intervention unit. In the Prime Minister's office, a politician screams in shock at the mention of U.S. forces. A grinning foreign leader on a monitor vows to solve the crisis by pairing up every outcast. The Prime Minister panics, shouting he was never informed about any Allied intervention. An aide reminds him their own completion plan never accounted for this surprise move. Another official smugly waves a stamped file labeled as a hastily revised version of the plan. A worried staffer runs up to the desk, insisting this situation now qualifies as an emergency. A stern advisor warns that sheer numbers make the crisis impossible to handle with domestic measures alone. Outside, troops stand by an open aircraft ramp as narration outlines a large-scale rescue for every cursed student. Back in the office, a bureaucrat assures the Prime Minister they are coordinating with American researchers to control the outbreak. The advisor grimly states that the U.S. will never keep their DTG cell research to themselves. He warns that foreign powers will surely try to twist this crisis into a new weapon. A business card reveals the name of American Special Forces Commander Emily Azaki. The smiling blonde officer stands formally, radiating practiced politeness. The principal nervously confirms that this cheerful visitor is really an American soldier. Emily calmly explains that her unit has special authority to manage the cursed 17-year-olds. She slides a form over, requesting the principal's signature while he frets about the armored vehicle outside. Outside, the heavy striker dragoon idles like a steel beast at the ruined gate. Emily cheerfully shrugs off the fact that their ride smashed the school entrance. Armed troops sweep the grounds while helicopters and tilt rotors thunder above the campus. Two students stare wide-eyed, whispering that something huge is clearly happening. Soldiers spread through the cafeteria, calmly herding confused teens into loose lines. A squad leader announces that preparations are finished and they are moving to Phase 2. A strange disc-shaped sensor whips through the air on the end of a metal pole. The device stops in front of a boy's chest, its display flashing a level of 0. A second boy with glasses flinches as the detector beeps and shows a higher reading. The operator shouts that DTG cells have been detected in the student's body. The boy recoils in panic as the word confirmed crushes any hope of staying anonymous. Loudspeakers crackle to life, assuring everyone that the tests are harmless and routine. A diagram explains that the handheld detectors simply measure DTG cell concentrations. Students shuffle past the soldiers as a warning urges them to obey if any alarm sounds. On the loudspeaker, Emily announces that anyone flagged will be processed under emergency protocol. Amamiya stiffens, repeating that chilling phrase under her breath in disbelief. Facing away, she mutters that she and Kurumi could have chosen their own moment instead. Kurumi forces a weak laugh, apologizing for turning her earlier confession into a joke. Amamiya remembers grabbing his hand and blurts that now the military plans to take that choice away. Kurumi's half-hidden smile twists as he notes she even convinced herself it was love. He then admits they no longer have time to talk things through like normal classmates. Amamiya suddenly asks if he is truly okay with letting others decide for them. Grabbing his hand, she urgently proposes that they run away together instead. On the rooftop, she tugs him toward the exit, insisting they have to move now. Their footsteps echo down an empty corridor as they sprint for freedom. Panting, Amamiya insists they can still escape through the back gate. While running, she confesses she hates the phrase cross into adulthood and what it implies. A memory shows her telling a friend she wanted to share that step only with someone she truly loved. She had always been mocked as old-fashioned and overly serious for valuing it that way. Dashing ahead, she urges Kurumi to think of it as graduating on his own terms instead. Kurumi realizes she is right and vows to treat their inexperience as something meaningful rather than shameful. Another student tearfully declares he would rather wait and stumble through that step with someone just as inexperienced. Amamiya warns Kurumi that at this rate he will be forced to drop out of his own ideals. She looks over her shoulder, asking if he does not want to become an adult in his own way. He answers firmly that he does, matching her pace down the hallway. Peeking around a corner, Amamiya asks if the coast is clear while Kurumi scans ahead. Kurumi thanks her with a calm smile and says he will go on alone from here. He stares straight ahead, declaring that he will make her fall for the real him. Turning away, he awkwardly adds that maybe someday they could even talk about marriage. Flustered by his own words, he backpedals and claims it was only a bad joke. Suddenly, Emily appears behind Amamiya, gripping her shoulder and asking where the pair think they are going. She corners Kurumi and bluntly demands to know whether he is still inexperienced or already accustomed to dating. Emily corners Kurumi and demands to confirm whether he has formed any meaningful relationship experience yet. Kurumi's wristband begins to beep frantically, betraying his status before he can answer. A holographic readout locks onto him, Emily confirming with delight that his DTG level is an impressive 72. Amamiya jumps in between them, insisting that Kurumi already has his own plan to graduate. She yells that the entire operation is wrong and orders Kurumi to run as soldiers move to block them. Emily's smile fades and she coldly mutters that Amamiya is becoming a nuisance. Amamiya gasps as a rough hand suddenly clamps onto her shoulder, making her flinch in shock. Emily cruelly mocks her, jeering that this timid girl has never even endured clumsy contact, yet dares to object. Kurumi shoves forward protectively, shouting for Emily to stop insulting Amamiya. Emily explodes, smashing her fist into his face while snarling at him not to lay a hand on her. Kurumi's body flies backwards and crashes to the ground, eyes wide with stunned pain. Trembling with rage, Emily rants that inexperienced students are disgusting, selfish, and dangerously clueless. Amamiya clasps her hands over her mouth, begging her to stop this hateful tirade. A nearby soldier rushes in, warning Emily that killing someone during the operation would cause an international scandal. Kurumi lies battered on the pavement, wheezing that he understands and will comply. Turning away, Emily mutters that she really lost her temper there. She forces a bright smile and casually tosses out a flippant apology. Soldiers gather the shaken students while a report states that all remaining targets are now contained. Kurumi staggers forward, clothes stained and eyes clouded, as Amamiya watches anxiously from behind. She calls his name in desperation, afraid he might give up on everything. Instead, he suddenly leans in and presses a trembling, earnest kiss against her lips. Pulling back, Amamiya smiles softly and says that this moment can stand as his true first step. Kurumi pushes past a soldier, shouting for them to move aside so he can reach Amamiya. He promises at the top of his lungs that he will survive and return to her side. Amamiya, tears forming, vows that she will be waiting and will guard her feelings until he comes back. Elsewhere, a soldier briefs Emily that Kurumi's DTG level noticeably dipped for a brief instant. Standing beside the striker, she insists on riding back in the tank because she refuses to share an aircraft with any more cursed teens. Watching the ospreys fade into the sky, she scoffs that the boy's vow to return unchanged is impossible, since his destination is the DTG research complex, ominously nicknamed Virgin Prison.